In the deep, tangled jungles beyond the Andes, where stone cities whispered with the voices of ancestors and rivers carved paths older than memory, there stood one final sovereign of the Inca, a boy born in exile, a king raised in resistance, a man destined to die so his people's story could live. Túpac Amaru, the last Inca. For most of the world, the story of the Inca Empire ends in 1533, when Atahualpa was betrayed and executed by Francisco Pizarro. But what most history books forget is that the Inca did not vanish that day. They adapted, they moved, and above all, they resisted. Following the fall of Cusco, the once great capital of the Andes, the remaining Inca nobility retreated into the eastern forests and mountains. There, in the depths of the cloud jungle, they founded a secret capital, Vilcabamba, a hidden city, a sovereign refuge, a spark in the darkness. And it was into this firelit twilight that Túpac Amaru was born. The exact year of his birth is debated, most likely sometime in the early 1540s. He was the son of Manco Inca Yupanqui, the warrior king who launched the first great revolt against the Spanish and carved out the last free Inca state. Túpac was born not into luxury, but into a world at war, where every prayer, every step, every breath was resistance. His childhood was shaped by whispers of empire, of what was lost, of what remained. In Vilcabamba, the old rituals were preserved. The language of Quechua echoed in sacred halls. Messengers still ran the trails. The sun god Inti was worshipped each morning. Though the empire's borders had collapsed, the soul of the Andes remained intact. As a young noble, Túpac Amaru trained in the warrior traditions of his ancestors. He studied astronomy, statecraft, and religion. But above all, he was taught never to forget who he was, the descendant of kings, the protector of a people, and one day perhaps the final hope of a fading world. By the time Túpac reached adulthood, his half-brother Titu-Cusi Yupanqui had become Sapa Inca, the emperor of Vilcabamba. Titu-Cusi, cautious and diplomatic, sought peace with the Spanish, even allowing missionaries into Inca territory. But that peace was brittle. The Spanish thirst for gold, labor, and land never ceased. In 1571, Titu-Cusi suddenly fell ill and died. Some claimed it was illness. Others suspected poison, possibly from the very friars the Spanish had sent. Suspicion spread, trust evaporated, and in the ensuing chaos, the nobles crowned a new ruler, Túpac Amaru, the final Inca. Unlike his brother, Túpac was not a man of compromise. He did not believe the Spanish could be bargained with. For him, the empire would not be slowly absorbed. It would either live free or perish in glory. Meanwhile, in Lima, Viceroy Francisco de Toledo had grown impatient with Vilcabamba's continued independence. When a Spanish envoy was killed near Inca territory, possibly without Túpac's knowledge, it was all the excuse Toledo needed. In 1572, the Spanish launched a full-scale invasion. Not just a punitive raid, a total conquest. Thousands of soldiers marched toward the jungle. They brought steel, firearms, crossbows, and thousands of indigenous allies who had long opposed the Inca. It was one of the largest colonial military campaigns mounted in the Americas at that time. Vilcabamba was sacked, burned, its temples desecrated, its people scattered. Quipus, the Incas' woven record-keeping system, were destroyed by the dozens. Histories lost forever. But Túpac Amaru had already fled, deeper into the rainforests, traveling with his family and a small retinue of loyal warriors. For weeks, the Spanish hunted him, tracking him through thick jungle and rugged passes. Rivers were dammed, villages interrogated, mountains searched. Eventually, on the banks of the Madre de Dios River, the last Inca king was captured. They shackled him in iron and forced him to march nearly 1,000 kilometers back to Cusco. The route was not chosen for efficiency, it was designed for humiliation. Along the way, people gathered in silence. Some wept, some prayed, others stared in disbelief. Their emperor, the living son of the sun, was being paraded like a criminal. When Túpac Amaru reached Cusco, the Spanish made a public spectacle of his arrival. This was no trial, it was theater. They accused him of rebellion, of murder, of paganism, of defying the crown. But to his people, he had committed only one crime, refusing to kneel. On September 24, 1572, in the Plaza de Armas, the Spanish prepared the stage. Thousands gathered. Colonial officials watched from balconies. Priests stood ready to absolve him. But Túpac stood tall, silent, proud, unflinching. His final reported words spoken in Quechua were, Pachamama, Riqui okakunak yawarni hichaskankuta. Mother Earth, see how my enemies spill my blood. Then came the blade. In one stroke, the royal line of the Inca came to an end. Not by battle, not by prophecy, but by execution. The crowd did not cheer. According to several chroniclers, even Spanish ones, the silence was heavy. Witnesses claimed many wept. Others turned away, because they knew what had been lost. But history has a strange way of keeping its promises. Túpac Amaru's body died that day, but his name became eternal. In the highlands, his memory was passed in secret, told through lullabies etched into pottery, whispered by elders around firelight. And in time, that whisper became a scream. In 1780, nearly 2 centuries later, a man named José Gabriel Condorcanqui, a noble of Inca descent, rose up in rebellion. He declared war against the Spanish colonial government, against forced labor, against racism, against silence. But he did not rise up under his birth name. He took a new one, Túpac Amaru de Secos. In his uprising, tens of thousands joined the cause. His banners bore the image of the sun. His soldiers cried out for the memory of the last Inca king. And though he too would be captured and brutally executed, drawn and quartered in front of a horrified crowd, his final cry echoed through time, I will return, and I will be millions. In the centuries that followed, the name Túpac Amaru became a rallying cry across Latin America, for revolutionaries, for anti-colonial movements, for the marginalized. In Peru, Uruguay, Bolivia, and beyond, political parties and resistance groups carried the name. Murals were painted, statues raised, songs sung. Even in the United States, his name reached Harlem, where a woman named Afeni Shakur, a member of the Black Panther Party, named her son Túpac Amaru Shakur, in honor of the king who defied an empire. That boy would grow up to become one of the most influential voices in global music, Túpac, blending poetry, defiance, and rebellion into art. So what then is Túpac Amaru's true legacy? He was never a global conqueror. He never commanded armies across continents. He had no towering temples built in his name. His reign was brief. His kingdom was surrounded. His death, cruel and humiliating. And yet, he endured. Not in monuments, but in meaning. Not in territory, but in memory. He stands as a symbol of what cannot be colonized, dignity, spiritual sovereignty, and the fire of a people who refuse to be erased. Túpac Amaru's story is not just a footnote in the fall of the Inca Empire. It is the final chapter of one world, and the prologue to another. And even now, centuries later, when his name is spoken, something ancient stirs. Not just a king, a voice, a prophecy, a resistance that never died.